President, Marion Akerman. Marion, over to you if you'll open the meeting for us, please.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon to you all. It's great to see you here. I think it's getting more difficult for people to tune in at lunchtime, so we might have to re-look at the way we're scheduling our chamber chats as people are returning more and more back to work. Today's topic is about, I suppose, how the city is going to look and function and how we're going to get over the challenges as we are slowly getting back to doing business in terms of retailing and hospitality business in Kilkenny. And I'm delighted that we have Tim here from the Kilkenny County Council, who's going to go through some information in terms of what the council have done to prepare the town, and that's something that we've been working together with the County Council on for the last number of months, both through our meetings with the Chamber and also our town task force meetings. So that's been a nice collaborative process, and we only hope that it works for the benefit of shoppers and visitors and the people living and working in Kilkenny. Also delighted to have Leslie and Heidi with us, Leslie from Market Cross and Heidi from Goods, two of the biggest retailing destinations in the city, to hear how they're getting on now that they're back in business as well. So that's brilliant, and it's great to have you here as well in the middle of the workday. So without further ado, John, I'll hand back to you just to start to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Marion. Okay, so the title of our session today is Reopening Kilkenny's Economy to a New Reality. And boy, does that title encapsulate everything that's going on at the moment. We've three speakers, as Marion said, and they'll roughly spend, 8 to 12 minutes, maybe 10 minutes-ish each, giving three different perspectives on what's going on, what's happening, and how they see things evolving into the future. So it should be very interesting. As I said a minute ago, we want to facilitate chatting as much as possible. It is a chamber chat. The only way we can do it really with so many people on will be through the chat function. So I would encourage you, use the chat function there to type in any questions or comments that you have, and we'll be keeping an eye on those to try and include everybody. And at the very end then, I'm going to run a poll. I'm going to ask you a question after we've heard everything the lads to speak about and get your views because we're very interested always to hear what you, our members, have to say. So speaker introductions then, I'll just say a little bit about each. Tim Butler is going to come up first. Tim is the Director of Services in Kilkenny County Council, and he has kindly prepared a few slides to accompany his presentation. So I'll be going through those as Tim speaks. And he's going to tell us about some of the work done by the local authority in preparing the city to reopen. Okay. He'll also tell us about various other important projects that are ongoing in the background and give us some updates on what we can expect to unfold over the coming weeks and months. So there's a lot going on. And then we'll move over to Heidi. Heidi Good of Goods Shop on High Street. Everybody knows it. Everybody's been in there, hopefully. Following weeks of shutdown, Heidi's going to share some insights from a retailer's perspective. What it's like to be shut down for so long and how the reopening has worked, both for her business and for her customers. Okay, and then we'll be moving on to Leslie Clear. Now, Leslie is the Centre Manager at Market Cross Shopping Centre. And given that it contains a number of essential services, not all of Market Cross shops were closed, and it never closed completely. So Leslie will tell us about what it's been like from a centre management perspective over the past few weeks and how things have changed since reopening the city last week. So there's a mix of different perspectives, all very relevant and I'm sure all very interesting. So without further ado, what I'll do now is I'll hand over to you, Tim, and I'll share your slides now and you can take over then.
Okay. Just what I'm going to cover here today, and I suppose a lot of you will know, will have seen a lot of this work going on around the city, even as we speak, is just what I suppose the local authority is trying to do to assist in the reopening of Kilkenny City and the wider economy within the city and county. I should start by saying we're very grateful to, I suppose, the Chamber and also, I suppose, to the recently appointed task force, because it gives us a mechanism that we can, I suppose, hear the views of the businesses throughout the city. And I'm not saying that we'll ever have 100% agreement on anything, but at least it gets a good, I suppose, synopsis for us of what the feelings of the businesses are if we're going or proceeding about different items throughout the city itself. So the content of this is really, I suppose, I'll be looking at the reopening of the city, the initiatives that Kilkenny County Council are undertaking to assist the city centre to open safely, the social distancing proposal, I suppose, the one-way system as it's known, but I suppose it's to give pedestrians a little bit of additional room on the footpaths. And I suppose the other side of that then as well is we're proposing pedestrianisation for James's Street from the Market Cross car park down to High Street from 9 to 9 every day, and Kieran Street to extend that from it is 10:30 to 5:30 at the moment, to extend that to from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the daytime as well. There's a number of new initiatives that I will go through as well. There's the farmers market and seated areas throughout the city that we're working on at the moment as well. And I suppose then there's specific projects within the city and the environs. You have the Abbey Quarter and the Lighthouse, the Western Environs infrastructure, I suppose, are the two main projects there, but I'll just mention a few that have recommenced and future projects that we have planned throughout the city as well. And then I suppose the recent survey, the reopening of the city itself, there was a survey done by Fiona is on the call with us here through Leo. And I'll just be giving you a few snippets of what has come out of that survey, which was, there was 463 respondents, I think. So it's a good broad set of respondents. So I think we can take a little bit of positive information out of what we get from that. Two things that I'm not going to cover today, but I just wanted to mention them, is that the shop Kilkenny will be starting in early July to try and get people back out in their numbers safely, I suppose, and into the city centre shops. And the Restart grant as well. At this stage, there is in excess of 400 businesses have applied for the Restart grant throughout the city and county. But we would encourage anybody who should apply to apply, because I suppose it is a grant that's available there to people to assist them to reopen and to comply with any of the new requirements that this virus, which is obviously going to be here with us for a year or two to come. So it's there to assist the businesses, and they should avail of it if they can. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is just social distancing and the temporary one-way system, I suppose, that we're proposing to facilitate that. Most of this is, after the first few slides, is pictures, so it'll be much easier to follow. So what we're proposing is a one-way system from Rosin Street, from John's Bridge to the Parade, and from High Street from the Parade to Parliament Street. Bateman Quay, connecting Parliament Street to John's Bridge, will be two-way in both directions. So it'll be, and when people come up, I suppose the one issue that we may have is when people come up to John's Bridge, they can turn left or right. So the right turn may cause us difficulties. We will be watching that closely when it opens on Monday. But there won't be any traffic coming from the Parade, so it should make it a little bit easier. So, but we will be watching out for that. The existing curb line will remain, and we will be putting bollards and white line markings and planters to delineate the carriageway from the widened pedestrian area. The widened pedestrian area will also facilitate, if queuing is required into any shops, that we will mark out that area with dots 2 meters apart at the moment. And if that changes, we can change that as well. And that will facilitate people queuing to go into businesses and leave the footpath free for pedestrians as they walk up and down. And that will ensure, I suppose, from a disability point of view, and we have run it by the local and national disability federations, and they are fine with the proposal. We're also, and there was works ongoing on the Parade yesterday and in Parliament Street in Irishtown today, I think, and that's to put in sensors so as that the lights will respond if there's no traffic at going a specific direction or coming from a specific direction, that they would turn red and facilitate them turning green earlier at other junctions. We're also introducing a one-way system which has planning permission on Ormond Street, and that's we're facilitating that in advance of doing any works there, just to ease traffic movement as well. So the next slide just gives you the outline of what the one-way system is. The red delineated marks is the one-way, the new one-ways. The green on Kieran Street and James's Street is the introduction of the pedestrianisation onto James's Street and the lengthening of the time on Kieran Street. And as you can see, Bateman Quay is two-way. So you can see that traffic movements, particularly at the parade and at Parliament Street, will be reduced, which will allow for freer movement of traffic at these junctions. This slide here and the right-hand side gives you a delineation of how the actual streets will look. The top one being High Street, and the bottom one on the much narrower Rosin Street. So you will have, we will be protecting all parking and loading bay areas on High Street. They will remain. They will be moved out the 1.5 metres on each side to facilitate the wider footpath area. And the area between the footpath and the new road itself, or the new delineated road, will be for queuing if required, or for pedestrians to pass each other. On the left-hand side then is the type of bollard that we're using. Obviously, this is a temporary measure, so we are screwing in the bollard on the bottom. That will be screwed into the pavement. And where we have paving stones, the areas. Should it become necessary to remove these at any stage, these are all easily removable, and we always have use for planters and for the bollards as well. And I would say that the NTA, the National Transport Authority, who have funded the bus service in Kilkenny City, the city bus service, they are providing funding for one-ways or these type of initiatives. So we're quite hopeful that we will be fully funded for all these works, and it won't impact on other road works that we were trying to do throughout the city this year. Pedestrianisation, as I say, in James's Street will be introduced from the Market Cross down to High Street from 9 AM until 9 PM in the evening time. And pedestrianisation of Kieran Street similarly will be extended to match, and businesses that require will be facilitated if they need to get deliveries down. That won't be a problem. In relation to parking, and we had proposed to reintroduce the parking charges from next Monday, but looking at the Market Yard on Thursday and Friday of last week, and even Monday of this week, it became apparent that the car park was full and causing issues, excuse me, causing issues that the people driving around looking for parking spots. So we have had to reintroduce parking charges in the Market Yard a little bit earlier than we anticipated, which is a positive sign, I suppose, as well, because there are more people coming into town, and the introduction of the parking charges will facilitate a good turnover of cars. As I say, the Market Yard car park, the turnover of cars in there daily is about 6 cars per day. So that encourages a lot of people to come in and out and do their business in the city centre itself. Other things that we're doing in relation to parking is the bus bays on the Castle Road, because there's no buses coming in at the moment. They're temporarily converted to pay and display to facilitate parking for the city. Similarly with the bus bays on the Fair Green. And in answer to, I suppose, a request from the John Street, they have requested that the Wolfe Tone car park be made an hourly car park to facilitate, I suppose, turnover of cars in that area. At the moment, this is an average of two to three turnovers per car parking space in that car park, compared to 6, I suppose, in the Market Yard. So as to facilitate businesses on John Street, it's €1 for the first 2 hours and €1 an hour after that, rather than it being a €2 a day long stay car park as it was up to now. A lot of people were parking here and working in the city centre itself, but there is parking, I suppose, ample parking available. I know it's slightly dearer in the city cinemas there. I think it's €3 a day, and at the Ormond and the McDonagh Junction car parks as well. So other measures that we're looking at, and I'm glad that picture appeared as well. We have a proposal for additional outdoor seated areas, because a lot of people are not, well, the restaurants aren't open, they're only open for takeaways at the moment, and most likely won't be able to facilitate the same numbers that they would previously have been able to facilitate. We're looking at seated areas throughout the city. So one of them is the locked car park on the right hand side is of the Watergate Theatre as you're looking at it. So we're proposing to put seats in there to facilitate people in the Parliament Street area who want to get a takeaway and come there and they can eat it. And we will regularly clean that and lock it at night time, lock it at 9 o'clock at night. We're also looking at the area behind Bollards, stroke Kittlers, that there's 23 car parking spaces there in the market yard. We're looking at converting that to tables as well to facilitate Kieran Street and that general area there, so as people can come out and eat their food there if there isn't room in the current restaurants. And lastly, then we're looking at the Mayor's Walk or the parade. We're putting in a few extra benches and tables there as well. They are being widely used by people for takeaways at the moment. On the footpaths themselves, we have an advisory keep left on the footpaths to facilitate ease of movement up along the footpaths as well. The farmers markets, and I'm conscious of time here, so I'll run down through this fairly quickly. We are proposing to have a farmers market on the parade on a Saturday or Sunday. We haven't decided which day yet, but we will be advertising that next week, and hope to have it in place for most of July and into August to try and generate people into the city centre. And we've also, and we needed council approval for both these things, and we got that at last Friday's meeting. We're going to facilitate local artists at weekends during the summer months to display their own paintings on the Mayor's Walk side there. So just a number of the projects that are close to completion. Obviously, Evans's Home, the Butler Gallery, is practical. We have signed off on practical completion of that at the moment, and the Butler Gallery are at the moment kitting it out, and we will probably have a soft opening of that with Butler Gallery in mid-July. And I think that will be an important tourist attraction. It's important that we sell that as well as we can. It'll be it's a huge project for the city itself. On the recommencements of projects, we've recommenced the works on the Callan Road, the Western Environs area. That's to incorporate up to 3,000 houses into the future, and two post-primary and a primary school. So works have recommenced on that on the 18th of July, and that will facilitate, I suppose, anybody coming to work and live in the city over the next 10 years. In relation to the Abbey Quarter, what you have in front of you there now is just the Brew House, and the Brew House itself, it has works have recommenced there on the 18th of May as well, and projected completion date is November 2020. It may be slightly delayed because of the stop due to the COVID, but we don't expect that there'll be much slippage in that, and that will provide much office space, and there's a huge amount of interest of new companies coming into that over the coming years. And on the right hand side of that is the linear park, which stretches from the tea houses down to Evans's Turret, which will be opened in July of this year. And that's down at the end of that will be the skate park as well, which is the much promised skate park, which will open towards the end of August 2020. The next phase of the actual Abbey Quarter is the park area, and I'll run through that very quickly. You can see the yellow and green area. It's about 2 acres of green park that will be in the centre of the city, and we will be setting that up in a manner that it can be used for festivals and different events going into the future. And on the next slide then is just a picture of the urban street. We're applying to on Board Planala before the end of June for permission for the urban street that will facilitate the buildings to the left and right, the Brew House on the left and the other buildings adjacent to the river on the right over the coming years as they are developed. And it will be a shared space for cyclists and pedestrians, and there will be no through traffic on this. So it will be an area that will be reserved, I suppose, for pedestrians and cyclists alike. Future projects, just to run through them very quickly, we have proposed one-way for an upgrade of Vicar Street, the one-way system which we have permission for on Ormond Street and the upgrade works there as well, upgrade works to Kieran Street and the Parade Junction, and then the links between Evans's Home and the Butler Gallery over across as far as the Medieval Mile and the St. Mary's District. And we have plans as well for many cycling routes, and we have just recently appointed a cycling officer as well. Just the survey then that I was just mentioning that the Leo would have done, a number of the questions that were asked is just one of the questions was, would you return to the city, or how quickly, would you return to the city once the businesses start reopening? And to city centre shops, 79%, which is a large amount, said that they would. 71% said they would return to cafes immediately as they open, and 64% to restaurants. I think that's an increase on what would have been seen in other surveys earlier in the time. So I think people's confidence as to the manner in which this whole virus was managed by the health services, I think there's a lot of confidence around it, and there's a lot of confidence around the businesses as they reopen as well, that they're all willing to do the right thing. From the opening hours point of view, a question was asked, do you want, and it was a simple, you had a choice to make here. Would you like the hours to remain as they are or to change? 31% would have said that they'd like to stay as they are. But the questions that were asked, would you like late opening on a Thursday or Friday, or a Thursday and Friday? There's 38% said that they would like to see late opening in the high street on those nights. So it's something that maybe you might like to consider. We will be going through this survey. As I said, we've only finalised it there in the last day or so. So we'll be going through it, and Leo, Fiona Deegan in the Leo office will be issuing a press release on it shortly. Attracting tourists back into Kilkenny, again, almost 95% of people wanted our tourists and wanted Kilkenny City to reopen again. 46% of those surveyed said they'd like it to be done gradually, whereas 45.7% said promote strongly. So you can see it's while everybody wants them to come back, there's a slight difference in whether we should be how strongly we should be pushing Kilkenny. But I think you can be assured of the support of Kilkenny County Council in whatever way we're going. And there is a tourism task force that has been set up to look at that as well. The top priorities for shoppers as they go into shops, and I know any of the retailers that are on here will certainly have this addressed already. Hand sanitizers, the availability of hand sanitizers, the adherence to social distance, and space to move around the shops. So sufficient space to move around the shops were the three most important things for shoppers as they went around through the shops. So my apologies, I think I was a little bit longer than I had hoped on that. So I hope you found that useful.
That was excellent, Tim. Thanks very much indeed for that comprehensive run through of what's happening, how you're dealing with the challenges, and what we can expect coming down the road. A lot of projects ongoing there, and lots to look forward to. So thanks very much for that. I know you did say at the start as well that you would make these slides available to us, so anybody who wants them afterwards will be able to send them on as well, because they're quite informative. So thanks very much for that, Tim. And you covered quite a lot in the short space of time that we allotted you. So moving on then to our next guest speaker as such, Heidi. And really from a retail perspective, we'd be interested to see, how have you found things? What's it been like to be closed down, forced closed down for so many weeks? And now you're back. You came back last week. I think you opened just one floor initially, and you're gradually opening the whole lot. It's obviously a learn as you go along. What have your experiences been from the retail perspective?
Well, like for anybody, it goes against the grain to have to close, even for a snow day. But to close for several months is quite an extraordinary experience for all of us. As you'll know, during that time that we were closed, or some of you might know, we lost two of our big brands, Oasis and Warehouse. They went into liquidation. They themselves, although struggling, were part of the victim of the pandemic, because they were going to be purchased, but then obviously confidence and all that just collapsed. So on that note, if I just put aside the kind of the personal loss and staffing and all that, and we just focus on the business aspect, I think what we've learned from that is, and what we've always done is, you've got to keep on having a plan B, C, and D, even if there's not a problem on the horizon, to think, what if there was a problem? So we do have some plans in place, not just selling off liquidation stock, but getting something new, and that was chipping away on that while we were in lockdown. As I know, with all retailers, a huge amount of work went into getting open well, getting open safely, from priority of our staff, and then for the customers. And I think, though, that has paid off, because though there was incredible kind of a bit of anxiety on day one, because we've done the hard work, as I know I can only see some retailers here now, but that it paid off. And so it's gone smoothly. I think we've benefited hugely from, customers. We've all been well trained going into our supermarkets or going into likes of garden centres. So coming into our stage, the customer and ourselves were well familiarized. So first week went pretty well.
And that's really interesting. And obviously, as you said yourself there, there's so many issues and so many things that we're learning as we're going along, the psychology of it all, and how we run our businesses. For you and everybody else in the retail business, you must have had stock already in your shops, which then you've been closed down, so you can't have been selling it for the past number of weeks. And probably you've commitments to new stock coming in. How's that dynamic all playing out for you?
Well, we're fortunate, I suppose, because as you know, our business kind of split 50-50 between concessions and our own bought. So the concessions, they just sort that problem out, that headache out themselves. With our own bought, we've been relatively fortunate. We've had some very good conversations with some of our suppliers, particularly Benetton. I have to mention them. They've just been extraordinary and almost preempted the problems that we would have. So we've worked out, very reasonable with them, so that's fortunate. And again, our suppliers in lingerie have all been. So we're I have to be mindful because we're very fortunate in I suppose between the concession models and our own bought that we haven't got stock too much caught on that. But I'm very aware that there's a lot of retailers on the high street who do and will have battles ahead with some of their suppliers over whether to pay for stock, not pay for stock, they're not taking it, and all that. So it's we've had maybe a slightly easier ride than others will.
Yeah, it's a very challenging situation. It doesn't suit anybody, and it's good to hear, that you have got some leeway and latitude from the suppliers as well. Because really, at the end of it, the tagline we're hearing quite a lot is that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
So if we can work together and find solutions, it doesn't suit any of us ideally, but look, can we work together and find a solution that maybe will suit as many people as possible? And that was very interesting from a retailer's perspective. How have you seen in your customers how they're responding and reacting, and indeed dealing and coping with this new reality of how they now are having to do their shopping?
Most of our, from what I've heard and what I've seen, a lot of our customers seem quite relaxed. There's a mix of whether they're wearing masks or not. Certainly in the first week, some were just thrilled to get a bit of retail therapy. Leslie, you probably saw that as well. Thrilled to get a bit of retail therapy, get out. Because we know for women especially, maybe it's a social thing as well. It's a talking, it's engaging. Increasingly over the week, we saw little groups of women, chatting in the floor. So you have to kind of, move them on because, conscious of that and all that. So that's good. So overall, I think what we're not maybe seeing is the nervous customer who hasn't yet come out. Certainly, I think there's a certain percentage of people who aren't going shopping. And that's particularly cocooners. I know my own parents aren't going into shops yet. So that's why the cocooning shopping and trying to provide that would be very important.
And I think you're touching on a very important point there, and that is that, it's affecting different people in so many different ways, and also the same set of circumstances, different people will observe and interpret it for themselves in a different way as well, and we all have opinions. So again, we need to respect each other's perspective on that. We're all in this together, as I said again a minute ago. Well, Heidi, thanks very much for those few words. And if I can go to Leslie, again, another perspective. You're operating the successful city centre Market Cross shopping centre, and indeed, because you have, I think, 6 stores involved in the provision of essential services, your shopping centre never closed completely. But now it's fully open again. Nearly everybody is back. What dynamic and things have you seen happening over the last few weeks, and then the change in the last week?
Well, there's been huge changes. Obviously, the shutdown happened very quickly, and the dynamic changed very quickly. And we kept 6 retailers, as you said. And the biggest change was the nervousness. So it became apparent very quickly that trust, hygiene and social distancing were the main priorities. So quickly, you have to train your staff, because there's a different mentality around the shoppers at this stage, and they're relying on us to make it a safe environment and somewhere they can go that they feel safe. So we were lucky we had super value, and deals, I have to say, and were amazing. Consumer confidence was strong throughout, and everyone complimented the shopping experience within there. Now, it was difficult to keep the social distancing at the start, but everybody started to come around to it. Having the car park then free of charge was a major bonus, and it helped the stores within the city centre, because obviously our Super Value would rely on the workforce that's around us. So that was very positive from the car park owner. And the first thing we had to do was sanitising stations everywhere. We did shut down our toilets. It was a very tough decision for us, but we're a thoroughfare through. Everybody just kind of walked through the market cross. And the biggest obstacle is to stop people kind of sitting around. So then we had to take away all our benches and all our seating. So for years we've been talking about dwell time, encouraging shoppers to stay. And now all of a sudden I'm on the speaker going, sorry, when you've done your shopping, can you please leave? And I think that's the hardest part, and that mindset. So it's changed completely, but I think we've done a great job. We reopened earlier than the other shopping centres. The only time I get to say we were lucky to be outdoor, partially outdoor, and the weather was good to us. So it made it easy. I was blessed to have great people around me in city centre. My contractors were a great support. With barrier systems, anything I needed, they were there for me, and often rang to ask how we were doing, did we need support. So there's a really strong sense of community, but not just between customers, sorry about that radio, not just between customers and each other. It's about a symbiotic relationship, and we can really see that now. People are complimenting the queue system that we have, the management that's happening with it. They're very thankful to the people that are working in the stores. It's more purposeful. You're not getting people hanging around. They want to come in and do their bits, and it's not mindless shopping. It's really kind of focusing. There's a lot of mindfulness going on. People are aware of their surroundings. You do have the change customers. Some are when coming out, they're very nervous, and we need to realize that maybe today is their first day out. So they may feel that somebody is too close to them. We're going to strongly start urging people to wear masks, and that take away that nervousness as well. And that's it, really. It's about creating a space where people feel that they're being looked after, and that they have a leisure there as well. Like Heidi said, shopping is a hobby, and all of a sudden we're told can't browse for too long, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it's really just helping encourage them to become aware that they can, but it's just a more mindful process.
Yeah, I think you're touching very similar points to what Heidi was touching as well. That there is a learning process involved here, and the conventional shopping experience is changing now because of the circumstances, and both the providers, the retailers, the premises management people like yourself, and then the customers as well. We all need to change and adapt to this new reality. And I guess you're seeing that in the way, the post-COVID customer is not the exact same as the one that we used to have.
No, they're not at all. I would say 90% are very respectful, very mindful of what they're doing, and very appreciative of the efforts that we're making to come out and work and to provide the services. And they're very willing to say that, thank you, for coming out. Thank you for organising this. And that's something we didn't really see before. It was almost like an expectation, but now it's more mindful, which is lovely to see. Obviously, you have some that are just either don't believe in COVID or are not respectful. And that's where we have to be very aware of ourselves and protect our staff and just ask, please, can you move? Or please, can you move along? And just explain, I'm sorry, this is for your own health. And once you say that, they're fine, and they understand maybe they're just in a different headspace. Yeah.
Super. Yeah, well, thanks very much. And I see we have one or two questions coming through the chat function. As we've been saying, there's lots of change involved in this, including what Tim Butler outlined there in terms of the one-way system and the widening of pads. That's going to change the dynamic as well in terms of, and Tim, I might put a question to you on that if you wouldn't mind, in relation to how shops are going to, affect deliveries and so on. And then I see we have Italo Andrade there from Celebrate It is in our meeting today. I'm sure for Italo now, once the James's Street is pedestrianised or partially pedestrianised, it'll be a challenge for him to get balloons and the like of that in and out of a van. What sort of provision, Tim, would you envisage being facilitated for shops that need their delivery vans coming and going a little bit during the day?
Yeah, look, we'll have to put facilities in place for people who have deliveries, but in general, on pedestrianised streets, deliveries are done in advance in the morning before 9 o'clock. That's when we ask people to do their deliveries. If that's not possible, we will facilitate them. If he can contact me offline, and I will certainly see can we put some facilities in place for him. And just in relation to any other deliveries, all the loading bays and parking areas along the high street will be retained. There's none being removed, so it won't make any difference, I suppose, to the high street itself. And obviously there is a change for Kieran Street, which we will manage as well. And if and as business require, we will be able to facilitate deliveries, but we would ask that people would do them outside of the pedestrian hours. It's I suppose to facilitate ease of movement of people up and down the streets and on our narrow footpaths, and to make them feel comfortable to go into the shops. So that's the reason for the pedestrianisation and for the widening of the footpaths in the Rosin Street and High Street areas.
Yeah, very good. And I guess it is a learning curve for us all as well. We'll see how it works and learn from it as we go along, and maybe adapt and adjust according to what the new reality becomes. Thanks very much for that, Tim, and thanks to all our speakers there. Before we wrap up, I promised I would put a poll question to you, and I'm going to do that now. By way of introduction to the question, I'm just going to say that, conscious that we're facing a new reality whereby things are going to be done very differently going forward, it's becoming increasingly important that shops maintain an effective presence online, and different shops are doing different things in that space. So Kilkenny Chamber is exploring the development of a new app, which is intended to help all Kilkenny shops to have a user-friendly presence online that supports the shop in town. So this app is going to be for every type of shop, from butchers to shoe shops, from clothes shops to hardware, and it's going to facilitate browsing, buying online, and it'll give the option to collect in the store or to have it delivered to you. So my poll question is, would you, as a shopper, a shopping customer, would you use a Kilkenny shopping app like this one to do your shopping? Because this is something that Kilkenny Chamber is working on at the moment with an app development company based in Kilkenny. And we'd like to know, if we go to the expense and the bother of producing this, do you think customers will actually use it? Because we've learned that it's important to do your business not just through the conventional shop on the street, which is hugely important, and we want to retain them forever. But we also need to realize that online presence is important, and every shop needs to be able to do that. Different shops are doing it to different levels of ability, I guess. So we were thinking as a chamber that perhaps we could help by getting an app like this in place. Okay, so we've got a good few respondents there. Thank you very much. I'm going to close the poll now in 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and I'll share the results there. So of everybody here anyway, 93% would use such an app if we were to introduce it. So we'll have a look at, we'll continue our exploration of that particular concept. So that brings our session to an end. What I'll do now is I'll hand back over to our Chamber President, Marion Akerman, who will close off for us. Over to you, Marion.
Thanks, John. Thanks again to our speakers. Tim, very informative, and I think it's great to see the council taking proactive stance on and allowing more space on the high street. and testing, I suppose, testing the system to see whether it works for everyone. And we look forward to the next few weeks and looking to see how it does work to allow businesses to comfortably operate around the High Street and Rose Inn Street. I think it's very easy to do nothing, and that certainly hasn't been the case in Kilkenny. And again, the combined knowledge and I suppose leadership of all of us here has been really helpful. And I think sharing ideas and sharing learnings is something that we can all benefit from. And it's great to see that happening on chamber chats and other forums as well, and ongoing meetings across chamber and other stakeholder groups. This is my last chamber chat as president. Our AGM will take place next Thursday for members. If you haven't registered to attend our AGM, it is the strangest one we've ever held. It's going to be via Zoom. So again, no pressure. John is going to have to look after all the technical glitches that day. But hope to see you all online next Thursday at 1 o'clock for our AGM, where I step down as president. So as the last, I suppose, social event, I must say Chamber Chats has been one of my favourite occasions throughout the last 2 years, and it's lovely to see so many familiar faces on here for the last Chamber Chat. The next Chamber Chat then will take place on the 2nd of July, and that will be hosted by Connors & Co, who are chartered accountants, and they are going to talk about surviving and planning for post-COVID. So we look forward to that event as well. So if you pop those two events into your diaries, it'd be great to see you there at that as well. So from me and from John and from Roisin and the whole board, we commit to continue to working hard to getting you guys the supports that you're going to need, that we're all going to need in the next couple of years, both locally and from national government, because that is going to be really, really vital. And feedback on all of that stuff continues to be very important. So if you've got challenges, if you've got ideas, please do feed them into the chamber office. And we appreciate all of that as well. Thanks a million. Have a lovely day, everybody. Bye.